Hey everyone, Jon here with Project Thrive. As you know, Dr. Gwaltney and I are co-directing a Project Thrive, a 5-year program, trying to help churches in the inner core of Nashville build a brighter future for themselves to go from just survival to a thriving mode. And so one of the things that we want to share with you through video are 7 characteristics of thriving congregations. Now, if you've been a part of Project Thrive over the last couple of years, you've heard us talk about these characteristics from time to time. But we did feel it was important for everyone to sort of be on the same page. We want you to understand what these 7 traits are, or these 7 characteristics, so that you can begin to think, does this apply to my congregation? If it doesn't apply, is this something that we can begin to build? Is there a culture around this topic that we can begin to invest in as a congregation? Now, as you've heard in the introductory video, Dr. Gwaltney and I and several others, we spent an entire summer researching churches across the United States that were located in an inner core of a city much like Nashville. And we began to look at congregations and see what's really making them be effective in ministry in the places where they are, as opposed to churches that are not being effective. And so we came up with these 7 characteristics. And I wanted to share the first characteristic with you in this video. And it's the characteristic of hopefulness. Hopefulness. A church whose culture was filled with a sense of hope. Now, let's be honest. We know that a lot of congregations, as the years progress and maybe as neighborhoods transition or maybe as numbers begin to decline, they begin to become very siloed, if you will. They become very self-centered and become a little bit fearful about the future. You'll hear them say things like, we don't have the resources, we don't have the people, we don't have the neighborhood we once had. And so they live in fear about what the future is going to hold. But we discovered in our work that thriving congregations, instead of having their life centered in fear, they have a sense of energy, a sense of enthusiasm about their congregation that is rooted in hope. In other words, these congregations believe that they can make a difference. Many of the pastors, in fact, said to us, we don't think God is through with us. We believe that we have been placed in this setting for a reason and for a purpose. And so we're here to find out what that is. And so they begin to look toward the future, not with fear and anxiety, but with joy and even with a sense of anticipation, asking themselves the question, what is God going to do with us? What does God want us to become? What are the people around us that God longs for us to reach? The pastor, the leadership team in the church, the key leaders in the church, all began to develop a culture of hopefulness. And that becomes a very contagious spirit in a church. When people begin to dream, when they begin to think about hope-filled thoughts in terms of we can become this, or God wants us to do that, to reach this particular people group, then great things begin to happen. So the question to ask your congregation is, are we a hopeful church? Now, I'm not talking about a false optimism that believes beyond the facts or believes beyond reason, but I'm talking about a congregation that has hope in the ability of God to transition their church and even transition their lives so that they look to the future knowing that they can make a difference in the world in which they live. So the first characteristic we want you to know about is the characteristic of hopefulness. I hope you understand that.